Hey, what's up? I'm Jackson. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of how I somehow became a famous magician engaged to the most beautiful and amazing woman I've ever met. See, it all started when I was a little kid. I was born in one of the biggest and craziest cities you'll find anywhere, Los Angeles. There are people everywhere here. Even in elementary school, I remember feeling like a tiny little fish in a huge sea. It was always hard to get anyone's attention, even when you really wanted it. I had some friends growing up, but they always had other friends too, and I felt like I was always the one getting left behind. But everything changed when I started middle school. Suddenly, there were adults around me who were also supposed to be my schoolmates. Big, muscly men with facial hair and low voices who would stare at me in the hallway. Tall women who wore crop tops and chewed gum and were always laughing about things together in some secret conversation. As we got older, guys in my grade started going out with other girls our age. They started saying things like, "My girlfriend!" My best friend Tommy started going out with Sarah Anderson, one of the most popular girls in school. I'd been fantasizing and hoping about all this just as much as the rest of these guys. Maybe more. But the whole time, I felt more like a spectator than a participant. I even thought, well, maybe if, or when I eventually get a girlfriend, I won't even brag about to these guys anyway. My first girlfriend ended up being in the fall of sophomore year. She was a year older than me, Janine. Janine was really into this band called Afflicted Sickness, where all the members wore leather and eye makeup. I didn't really like the music, but I didn't tell that to Janine. I liked her style. She wore huge leather boots and had a ring through the middle of her nose and always stood out from the rest of the girls. I really liked being around Janine. We had some good times together, going to the county fair, going out just the two of us to the movies one night. I even took her out to a pretty nice dinner one night. Just for fun. But none of my guy friends ever really asked me about her. They were all too busy obsessing over other girls in the school. Girls like Jessica Marbury. Jessica was a junior, and she had dated several of the guys on the football team. She also had something like 10,000 Instagram followers. She was always posting pictures in her bathing suit or with arms around a group of other pretty friends. I know because, well, I was one of those 10,000 followers. I also knew, mostly from her Instagram, that her dad was pretty rich, and she had an older sister named Monica. She looked quite a bit like Jessica, but a little bit taller with darker hair. I'd seen her only a few times around the high school. I guess she graduated already, but would come back to go to football games. It was almost like seeing a celebrity. After graduation, Janine left to go to college on the East Coast. I stayed home and enrolled in a local school here in LA. We never really broke up officially, we just kind of stopped talking to each other. She kind of lost interest in me, and I guess over time, I kind of lost interest in her too. To be honest, I kind of lost interest in dating altogether. College had so many people, so many strangers, so many girls. It all just felt kind of overwhelming. When I wasn't in class, I spent a lot of time in my dorm room. And here's the funny thing. I actually got really into learning magic tricks. I was surprised how much you could learn just by doing some research online. I had a lot of time on my hands too, so I got good really quick. I can make cards change places with each other, or disappear and reappear inside the deck. I can make coins vanish, or turn a $1 bill into a $100 bill. I started doing some of these tricks to people hanging around the common area in my dorm. Never forget the first time I did a trick for somebody and it actually fooled them. Pretty soon, people started having nicknames for me. They'd say, "Hey, Magic Man!" or "What's up, Mr. Magic?" Honestly, it was a little embarrassing at times. But it was great to feel like people knew who I was, and that I could do something that impressed them. Little did I know the effect this was really going to end up having on my life. Fast forward a few months. I was at a big party off campus. The only reason I even got into this party was because a group of people from my building were all going and had invited me last minute to join them. I felt pretty out of place and a little nervous. I was standing near the kitchen, just kind of taking in the whole scene around me, when I noticed a familiar-looking young woman standing out on the back patio. It took me a split second, but then I realized it was Jessica Marbury. With a surge of butterflies, I suddenly realized that I had brought a deck of cards with me in my jacket pocket. What if I went up to her and started doing card tricks? Half of me thought it was the worst idea I'd ever thought of, but the other half realized it might actually work. And how could I live with myself knowing I missed this opportunity? My heart was pounding so hard in my chest, I was worried people would hear it as I pulled the cards of the box and started walking towards Jessica and her friends. I felt ridiculous. All of a sudden, I recognized the guy who was standing next to Jessica. It was my old friend, Tommy. When he saw me, he didn't smile. Neither did Jessica. In fact, she put her hand up and said loudly, "Go away, you creep! We don't want to see your stupid magic trick!" Tommy looked shocked, but even though I thought he was my friend, he didn't say anything. I told myself right then and there I would never touch my cards again. I was almost fighting back tears as I went to look for my other friends and demand that we leave right away. But then, as I was walking out of the house, I heard a woman's voice coming from the living room. "I'd like to see a magic trick." I turned around. It took me a second to even process what I was seeing. It was Jessica's older sister, Monica. I didn't even know she was at this party. She was sitting alone on the sofa, looking right at me. "Are you sure?" I said, trying my hardest not to sound as upset as I was. "Yeah!" She patted her hand on the sofa right next to her. Without thinking, I went and sat down next to her. I pulled out my cards. "Take one." Fanning them out in front of her, she pondered the deck for a second or two, then quickly snatched a card out. I realized at that moment I should probably figure out what trick I was going to do. "Should I look at it?" she asked. Right then, I knew exactly what trick I was going to do. "Yeah, look at it and remember it," I said. "But don't let me see it." I had her shuffle the card back into the deck, and then I showed her another card. "That's not it, right?" She shook her head no and said, "Okay," I said. "Now hold on to it." I put the card face down in the palm of her hand. She leaned in towards me, looking right into my eyes. I wondered if she was just doing this because she felt bad about how her younger sister had acted. Maybe she was just taking pity on me. But then I wondered, what if she wasn't? "Do you remember your card?" I asked her. She nodded and smiled. A wide, glowing smile that would have stood out on the cover of any magazine. Struggling to stay focused, I said, "Say out loud what your card was." Without breaking eye contact, she paused, then said, "7 of hearts." I pointed to the card in her hand and said, "Look." She quickly flipped over the card to reveal it was now the 7 of hearts. Her card. "What?" she squealed. She started laughing and put her hand on my shoulder. "How did you do that?" she said. I ended up showing her 4 or 5 more tricks. It was my friends who ended up having to come and find me to say it was time to leave. Each trick I did, she seemed more amazed than the last. "How did you learn to do all this?" she asked me. Then she said, "Why have we never met before?" As I was getting ready to leave, she grabbed my arm. "Wait," she said quietly. I froze. "Why don't you come back with me to my apartment tonight?" At first, I didn't say anything. I couldn't speak. "I was supposed to give my sister a ride, but I think she's going off with some guy. You should show me some more tricks." She grabbed my hand with both hands and clasped her fingers around it. "I'd love to," I said, still in shock. That night marked a turning point in my life. I realized for the first time that I was wrong. I was wrong about what other people thought of me. I was wrong about who did and who didn't want to be around me. And I was wrong about who I was capable of befriending and what I was capable of doing. I'd been telling myself a negative story about who I was that all this time I'd never actually put to the test to find out if it was true. Monica and I started seeing each other every other day. The days turned into weeks, then into months, and then into years. I felt like this beautiful woman who'd I'd fallen so madly in love with had also become my all-time best friend. I also managed to patch things up with Tommy and her sister Jessica, who apologized to me afterwards and said she and Tommy had been having a fight that night. A couple years later, I started a YouTube channel for my magic, which I had been practicing at Monica's insistence almost every day since we first met. I had been shy about showing magic to anybody, and now I was putting it on display for the entire world to see. To my surprise, the channel started blowing up. Within the first few months of posting videos, I got 1,000 subscribers. Then, after a year, I had 50,000. I had fans from all over the world watching my videos and sharing their reactions, and I started making good money. Not just from the channel, but from performing shows at events and theaters around the city. Earlier this year, I embarked on my first ever tour, performing magic for audiences in small theaters all around the U.S. I was afraid to tell Monica, and I was also afraid to leave her for several months. But she blew my mind when she said, "No, you have to do it! I'm so excited for you! I love you!" This tour has been amazing. I just got off stage yesterday for the last time on the tour. The house was packed, and there were some of the best reactions I've had all year long. I'm flying back to Los Angeles tomorrow, where I know Monica will be waiting with open arms. I'm so excited to see her and tell her about my adventure that words can't even come close to describing the feeling. Just like when we first met, I've got something for her in my jacket pocket too. But this time, it's not a deck of cards. It's a ring I bought using some of the money I've earned from this really successful tour. Part of me wishes I could go back in time to that nervous, doubtful teenage version of me, hiding his deck of cards in his pocket, wondering what would happen if he took them out and showed people his talent. I know if he saw the crowds I've just seen, the paychecks I've been cashing, and the ring I'm bringing home, and most of all, the women I'm bringing it to, I know that he would wonder no more.